I saw Superman v Batman for the second time today. So I thought I would do a spoiler review. Even though, my previous view didn't get a lot of, viewings or whatever. But, whatever. And I figure, by now enough people have seen it. And even if they haven't, I'm, giving notification, I'm giving out spoilers. However, I'm only going to give out a few spoilers. I'm not going to spoil every single thing that happened in the movie. But first off, let me just state that again, I personally liked this movie. Opinions of this movie differ, just as opinions of Man of Steel differ. Some people didn't like it, some people really did. I'm in the camp of enjoying it. If you're not interested in this movie or you didn't like this movie, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. I would say if you're interested in Superman, Batman, or the DC Universe, give this movie a chance. I found it quite good. It isn't a superhero bash 'em up. And granted, it was kind of sold as that, but it's a little bit more of that. It's dealing with the nature of power and, people's reactions to that, of being in power. Anyways, I was going to just only spoil a few certain things that happened in this movie, and a few others have already talked about this. The first thing is that the one thing that eventually changes Batman's mind is that Batman and Superman both have a mother or stepmother with the same name, Martha. And Batman, has Superman at a disadvantage. But let's remember, the only way Batman could have an advantage is, first off, he has the kryptonite. Without that, he wouldn't be able to tackle Superman at all. Second off, Luthor has, Martha held captive. So Superman already is holding back. He even says, if I wanted it, you'd be dead already. Superman, if, as we see in the last movie, felt driven enough to take down Batman, he would have done it. He didn't feel driven out, to a point to kill Batman. He didn't want to kill Batman. He was forced into it with Zod. He's forced into it this time only because Martha is held captive. But he's still kind of holding back. And he's not entirely giving it his all. If he was giving it his all, and so forth, and there was no kryptonite, no contest. Batman would have been dead. And if, the other thing is that there are certain scenes where Batman is clearly afraid of Superman because he's going up against someone with so much immense power. How do I fight this being? And again, it's the same names of the mothers that brings them together, and they both see that they have something in common, that they don't have to fight. Because let's remember the subtitle of this movie that I think is getting forgotten about. Dawn of Justice. This is leading up to a united Justice League. This is leading up to not two heroes fighting each other, but coming together, and fighting together. Not being apart, being together. And the second thing I was going to talk about was the nightmare scene and the Flash moment, where it seems as if Bruce is having a nightmare in this apocalyptic future, and he's wearing this war armor and so on, and Superman has his own army and they're parademons and so on, and then he has this vision of the Flash, appearing and saying, "Oh, am I too soon?" and so on. There's been a few theories, and I'm going to give mine partly based off these and my own thoughts. I think that the nightmare sequence is an alternate timeline. It's what could have happened. And it's, Flash, as we know, can go to different Earths and different timelines. So Flash was at this nightmare timeline and is trying to prevent that. Just as Impulse tries to prevent his, future in Young Justice. Flash is trying to prevent this nightmare from becoming a reality. So he's trying to talk to Bruce. You were right about him, but what's important to Superman is Lois Lane. He's trying to, warn Batman, but Bruce doesn't entirely understand the message, of course. So I think this nightmare sequence is, a possible future or possible timeline. The other thing, as we know, parademons and the symbol, that is a reference to Darkseid and the Fourth World, a major, DC villain, who, as we know in the New 52, was the first villain that the Justice League came up against. Now, for you Marvel fans who are saying, oh, Darkseid is a knockoff Thanos, well, let me correct you. Or any DC fans who think this, let me correct you. Darkseid came first. Then came Mongul, who was slightly modeled after, actually I think it was Darkseid, and then the artist for Thanos was influenced by, the design of Darkseid. So the design of Darkseid went and played a part of Thanos. And, the artist of Mongul was inspired by, the way Thanos looked. So let's be clear, Darkseid first, Thanos, his look influenced by Darkseid, Mongul influenced by the former, which was, again. So Darkseid was first. I know thematically it's going to seem like, one is before the other, but that's not actually the way it is in comics. Anyways, let's move on to the other thing. And I realized when I talked about this last time, I was maybe giving up a larger spoiler than I actually meant to when I referenced Superman Doomsday. Because as we know, Doomsday appears into this movie. And in this movie, Doomsday does what he does in comics. He kills Superman. So, and Bruce and Diana are left alone. And, so Bruce is going to be inspired to bring the heroes together and make the Justice League. And, join together. How we're going to bring back Superman movies yet, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Now, this is Superman Doomsday was the first of the DCU animated movies, direct to video movies, and it led to this whole franchise that has led up to now Killing Joke on DVD, and Justice League versus Teen Titans, and so on. Batman Bad Blood. And, I personally, these movies are, they're kind of in between. They have good animation, they have some good voice actors, sometimes they have good stories. From the beginning up to now, I would say that's always been the case. That it's either give or take. That, say, the anime movie Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. Probably the one thing I liked most about that movie was James Woods as Owlman. And that was pretty much the best thing about it. It wasn't a great movie, but I liked, him as Owlman and what he did in the role. Other more recent movies have been a cut above. such as Batman Under the Red Hood, which led to, briefly anyways, a much better quality of movies and a much more in line with the comics type of movies, because we get Batman Year One, Dark Knight Returns, All-Star Superman, all very close to the source material. Some, such as Superman Unbound, which is a loose adaptation of the Brainiac story arc by Geoff Johns. Some, such as these, they're in touch with the original, but they're taking liberties and, they're doing things different. Just as Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, it's close to the original, but it's taking a few liberties and changing some things. Same thing with Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. That was taking a few liberties and so on. Anyways, point is that some were very close to the source material, some only, little bits and pieces of. Either slightly close, very close, or just very, very loose adaptations. Some are better than others. Some, there's just only bits and pieces that are, enjoyable. Anyways, this is the first of these. I personally am a fan of this. Some, maybe more hardcore fans aren't entirely a fan of this. But let's review. We had The Death of Superman, which is a very short story. The follow-up, World Without a Superman, which was a little bit longer. Then we have The Return of Superman, which is a much longer book. Now, let's just look at this. Imagine, this, 3 volumes. Very thick when you look at it all together. And you want to make a, hour or, so movie, I can understand taking a few liberties. Because there's no way you can fit all of this material into a movie, even if we have it live action. But again, no movie is ever exactly like the source material. If you want the source material, read the source material. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is something we fanboys have to, learn. We appreciate this source material. We and should understand that the movie cannot be exactly like it, but can take the good elements of it and do something good. Just as the Nolan trilogy was taking elements of Batman, not exactly, because after all, Harvey Dent dies, and, takes liberties and changes some things, but it does it in its own way. It's its own universe, So it's respecting the source material, but creating its own thing. It's not entirely the comics, but appreciate what it presented to us. So, same thing, sorry, for this movie, appreciate what it's giving to us. It has, quite well, The Death of Superman, which, again, is a short story. It's easy to make a shorter, do this briefly, the death. Just as this Batman v Superman does. You could just briefly touch on this. Both this movie and Batman v Superman briefly touch on this, and that's all you really need. You just need Superman going up against Doomsday. He sees he's no choice, no option, and they both go down fighting and die. Now, this movie kind of only briefly touches on the world without Superman. It would have been nice if they spent more time with this part of the storyline, because it shows, what the world is like without this character that's been around. How important this character is, and what the world is like without this character. So this movie only briefly goes into that, and I understand time constraints and so on. Now, for live action, I hope, there's a little bit more time spent on what the world is without Superman. Now, anyways, moving on to, again, The Return, there were various returns. There was the Superboy, Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator, and Steel. These guys came, first off. Then we get the One True article. The point is being that people accept the imitations coming so soon after because they're kind of desperate for the hero before the actual true hero is revealed. This movie still has that basic undertone. Yes, it does not have Steel, Superboy, and the Cyborg Superman, these four characters. It shortens that narrative. And, honestly, for a movie, you kind of have to do that. You have to make sacrifices. Again, for time constraints. And for, animated movies, because of production-wise, the animation process, so on, you have to cut corners and make sacrifices. So in this version, we only have one sort of Superman imposter, who, like Superboy, is a clone, but is a little more like Cyborg Superman in that he's not the actual hero, he's more of a warped version of this hero, until the One True article comes back. So this animated movie has that basic theme. And, so if there's going to be, a live action touching upon World Without and The Return, I will understand if they cut corners or do not do the exact thing, just as this animated movie did. And I realize I'm probably talking a lot about this and the animated movie a little bit more, but I feel this is important, especially seeing the end of this recent movie and what's going to come in the future. That if we get a future Superman related movies, that we're not going to get the exact storylines. We've got a basic death of Superman. Granted, that Wonder Woman nor Batman were part of this storyline. There was a Justice League at the time, but they wanted to have the basic trinity, and I understand that. So this Batman v Superman already has given us the death of Superman. We'll see how, if any future movies will in any way have World Without. Maybe the solo movies will. That will, or even Suicide Squad. That Suicide Squad, is, showing us a world without Superman. And then we'll get some sort of return. Or maybe that the Justice League movie will have the return, but a return where he has to deal with Darkseid and join together with all these heroes. I don't know yet. I'm just guessing here. But anyways, there's all these possibilities the movies can go, and which I think it's wonderful that we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know how they're going to handle the World Without, or the Return, or the Justice League, or the solo movies. We don't know yet, and I think that's very good. We've already had in my opinion, very good movie with a death, World Without, well, a little anyways, and the Return of Superman. And did it quite well, in my opinion, anyways, So how future movies are going to do this, we'll see. Who knows? Anyways, moving on. So, with the other heroes, again, they're only brief references and nods. And I think maybe that's, probably for the best. Everybody, including myself, thought this was going to be a crowded movie with bunches of heroes. Actually, that is not what this movie is. We have mainly Superman and Batman, and we get who these characters are, and in the moment, anyways. We know who this Batman is. We already know who Superman is. We have a tease of what Wonder Woman is, and she takes part in the action. And because she's part of the big trilogy, she has more scene time. We're going to see in future, when she gets her own movie, which I think is actually upcoming, what she's like. And we get only very briefly the other, heroes. We get, very briefly again, the Flash talking to Bruce, the Flash, scene footage of him stopping the robbery. We have the Aquaman footage of him under the sea. We have pretty much an origin story of Cyborg, who, as we know, is, after the accident, his father creates him. So we have that brief footage, and, so we have these heroes. And someone had said there's a reference to Hal Jordan. I kind of missed it. I'm going to look it up, so I'm not for sure. Anyways, it isn't a crowded movie because we're only getting hints and references to these characters. What this movie is doing, it's whetting our appetite for the future. It's getting us interested. And maybe this is why they've killed off Superman. Maybe this is what the world without is. That with Superman gone, we have to look through other heroes. So, we have to go looking for Flash. We have to go looking for Wonder Woman or Aquaman or Cyborg. And that eventually Superman's going to come back and we're going to have the Justice League. Or maybe they'll have it without him. Who knows? We'll see. I have to believe that, especially given the ending, where, we see Clark's grave and we see the coffin, and very briefly, the dirt starts rising up. So that's an indication that he's going to come back. So, it's whetting our appetites. Again, Marvel had the solo movies, then had the team movie. This one is the opposite. But I think it's doing it correctly in that it's having the group, but it's only having hints and nods. It's, getting us curious, because we have now a cinematic universe without Superman. We're going to have to go looking for these other heroes and learning who they are, and how they're, so we're going to see how they're going to do these movies, origin stories or whatever. I think it's very interesting that the follow-up to this movie is Suicide Squad. And it's, because we get what we think is two Titans fighting each other, but actually joining each other and fighting side by side. And more heroes joining together. We're going to get a movie with villains sort of together, but, of course, being villains or what, bad guys, whatever. They're not, trusting each other and so on. And, so we're going to get the side of the villains. This Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, I feel, is very classic comic book supervillain. Again, he has the childish, manner. He's very eccentric. He's, clearly disturbed. And again, the whole evil atheist angle still bothers me, but whatever. Anyways, so we have that villain, and we have Doomsday. But, we're going to get next time all villains, and, all together. So, anyways, those are the basic spoilers I wanted to talk about. The Darkseid, the nightmare sequence, which is either, again, as I'm suggesting, a possible timeline, or just actually is, just a bad dream. And, that's, the Martha's thing. Oh, also, we do have the photographer in the beginning is Jimmy Olsen, but this Jimmy Olsen is CIA agent who gets killed, unfortunately. My concern here is this because there's a Jimmy Olsen on Supergirl, and we don't want audiences confused? That's my concern there. Especially with Flash coming up, because Flash is still on TV. I'm hoping they're not going to kill off Grant Gustin's, Barry Allen. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about those spoilers rather than spoiling the entire movie. Because there's other things going on in this movie that I haven't talked about. Because these spoilers that I've talked about, these are the ones that interest me the most. And, are things that are going to reflect the future of this DC franchise. Because there are elements of, Man of Steel that have not yet been paid off. Like the whole thing about the Codex being in Superman's DNA. This is not something that I feel has been satisfactorily addressed. I think this is going to come up in future movies. At least I hope it does. So, anyways, that's just the basic spoilers I want to talk about, because I feel that it's items worth discussing and items that are important to the DC universe. So, for those of you who've been watching, I thank you and hope you enjoyed this, discussion.